bots out there would be mass malfunctioning.
Which may be part of what they want to present. Of course, I'm not saying that this is what is actually happening, um, but I am reading the in between the lines, because we know that this was no shooting at all. That is evident. But
Yes,
if you
yes.
believe there was a shooting, and if you believe that an MK Ultra Manchurian candidate did it, you understand? It all links together into a different story,
Yeah, that's what I
right?
call a guardrail conspiracy. So those of us who know it's all staged realize, yeah, it's all fake. Nobody got injured. No real victim. No real victimizer. However, the people who know it's or see something off or their intuition still works, they'll be naturally led to this other explanation without jumping right into it's all fake. And so these stories are rich like that and layered to guide people away from the truth. And one thing Lean Dion in the comments pointed out, one of the themes in the Joker movie, mental illness, and the system failed him. And that's kind of this guy's theme as well.
Yes, exactly. Now we can understand. Now we can read the movie Joker much better than when it came out, right? Although it already was had evident pointers there, but now it comes together much more evidently for us.
Sure. Now that we've lived it a bit, and when you
Yeah.
really break that movie down, Joaquin Phoenix, the name Phoenix hints at reset. Batman uses the Phoenix the bat as a Phoenix, and we had the bat as the catalyst for this reset, this burn down, build back better. And then, of course, before the Joker movie came out, Joaquin Phoenix was doing some hardcore environmentalist activism and even got thrown in jail. And he was doing this type of activism that actually corresponds to the Joker. So this is another parallel between his real world character and the movie character. And they're both, of course, phonies or they're both scripted, but more parallels.
Yes. Yeah. I see a comment about my voice. Sorry about that. I had some tasty bat soup, and this started happening. I don't know.
Yeah.
Um,
Uh, uh, this is true for like a week and a half, maybe a little longer. There's a period of time where we were talking about bat soup a lot, and YouTube had actually banned the bat and the bowl emojis from being side by side. It,
really?
it somehow corrected itself, but for there's a period of time you couldn't even bat soup emoji.
I didn't know. No, well, whatever.
But isn't it remarkable though, how for years we've had the burning bat symbol in our faces, and now the catalyst for the big psyop is a bat. And then we have this literal Phoenix operation, and the guy's name is Joaquin Phoenix, the Joker. So
Yeah.
it's like it's pretty layered here. But the correlation between the bat and the Phoenix and the lockdown, yeah, it's just pure scripting. And again, this
Yeah.
is a reoccurring use of these same characters, and I just feel like, yeah, they're recycling the news though. This is Boston bombing light.
And the funny thing is that they censor not if you notice they do not censor exactly the truth. What they censor is the opposition that they've created, right? So the story is that it was a bat soup, right? So they censor the bat soup. They don't censor the non-existence of um, the whatever. I'm not going to say the name not to get you banned again.
You're
But
right though. It's about meme control, and they
yeah,
know that. Yeah, they don't want trending memes going out there that they don't control. And I think ultimately that's what this thing was. It was a major power grab, so they can lock down memes from to the level of the individual. And it's happened. We've seen a revolution against free speech in the last few years. The digital book burning. So nobody sees the smoke, but we've paid attention to it, and it's a flagrant disregard for free speech as just a value in itself. And when you really look at it, there's darker implications when you can take the organic, spontaneous, created culture of millions of people and just delete it without even thinking. It's like they don't even value these ideas. They assume it's all garbage or not worth hearing. Very, very tyrannical in a way.
Yeah. Well, Tim, I don't know if you want to stay on topic or if I could um, go beyond it, or
Yeah, we can definitely drift off because the main thing that I was conveying today, or the main topic today, is that this event is clearly a parallel to a movie character. It's got all the hallmarks of being staged, 33 bullets. There's really nothing about it that screams real. So no, anything is really on the table now. Like you said, you notice these things, you see it's fake, and you move on. That's kind of our approach too. It's fun to go deep into the weeds though, and show people how we know. But by all means, this is just one little blip on the radar, so we can veer into anything.
yeah, because like I've told you, I've tried to. By the way, I can't message you on Discord because I have to be your friend or something. I sent you a request. I don't know if you want to, because I can't actually write to you on Discord, only mention you.
Oh yeah,
But
you can use Skype messaging for that as well. I actually put a block on DMs on Discord because I had a troll once that was sending it was a kind of a security flaw. So for
uh,
Discord, we just keep it all out transparent, but you can private message me, email, or DM me here on Skype or even Twitter. And I will start checking Skype now that I have it activated.
okay, no, I mean you don't have to explain it. Just letting
Also,
you know.
yeah,
But
yes.
I
Also
had.
for others too, because I've been wanting to use Skype for some time, but I really haven't had a need to. And so I'm very thankful for you wanting to call and use Skype because it gave me an excuse to set it up. So it's another feature we've added.
It would be too expensive to call the U.S. Um, so I've took quite a few notes, and I'm not gonna perhaps go through all of them now. We can um, do this at another time, also when I find you live. But one of the notes that I have here, and this was from a past replay that I got, was when you were mentioning Vulcan as the I think it was about the slap, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah, it was about Vulcan the blacksmith, who is, of course, married to Venus in one of these stories. And in one of the stories, he defended Venus and got kicked out of Olympus. And I'm like, wow, we have a Will Smith, not a blacksmith, but a Will Smith who's black defending a Venus. And symbolically, it links up, and of course, with the green emerald dress that Jada is wearing, very Venetian.
yeah. And note that Vulcan is Roman, and in Greek it would be Hephaestus. And this was something because as you were in those shows or those lives, as you were describing that connection to the Vulcan character, I remember something that I had written in 2019, and that I think is relevant to what you were describing. So, if I could, it's just a little paragraph.
Yeah, by all means.
Um, Purpose is a motivation to keep each of us in the game as much as despair is. One will keep us going in the illusion prison, the other will keep us helpless in it. Yet both carry with it, invisible to the ego and the shadow's eye, a key to unlock realization. Both begin by being triggered through what I would call a lower script. This is a narrative developed by the timed illusion to set before our ego characters a trial that always carries with it a simple yet dishonest question, which is good or evil? That is the question. This question is dishonest because, regardless of the choice in the lower narratives, the result is always further trials, further illusions, further missions, further purposes. The constructs that make up the ego feed on emotion, and so excitement is paramount to them. Excitement comes from both physical senses and mental senses, which are not our true selves. In fact, these senses are not made up of anything true. They are real in the sense that a walking, talking robot is real, but not true, as they have no inner life, being artificial inventions to mimic and copy life. So in the lower script, we must understand that we are these constructs. That every time one says the word I, or if one has a direct or indirect affinity for the Old Testament, the words I am, one is actually referring to this set of artificial parts, this device, made up of physicality, which are merely composites of elements, so no true things by themselves, and of mental programming. Words, languages are in fact programming code to allow the mind in the body to have a lower narrative. Mind you, some operating system is already included in us. We call it animal instinct. But to be able to read and follow the lower narrative of our life roles, we need language. It guides us to be this, that, or the other role, to achieve or strive to achieve this or that goal, and to carry a hope or a dream that will keep us tantalized. As long as our true selves lie hidden from us, or being kept prisoners by the fear of loss that emerge from the construct's survival programming, we are unable to return to truth, to what we are beyond the self and world devices. This construct, an artificer device that is able to build further apparatus, concepts, and devices, is clearly shown in the myth of Hephaestus, the god once born in Olympus, but cast down from it due to his deformity. Since then, he became a master at building illusionary life, magnificent devices, but has been disconnected from his birthplace. Of course, as a side note, I am not truly equating Olympus with truth, but merely pointing out the sort of fractal analogy that the myth has with our predicament. In the same manner, we could look at Olympus and find the same recreation over and over again, born from a single fall, that of Gaia from ether. So from the ether, Gaia came into being as matter and created Uranus as her firstborn. So entranced was she by her dream that she did not notice that instead of being the beautiful, perfect being she wished, she was creating evil. In that sense, Uranus was the first Hephaestus at that level. He was the first deformity, right? She then, so in love with her creation, copulated, got involved in mutual creation with her son and consort Uranus, who from above used her matter to mold a world and its first life. The first were the Titans and the giants, of whom Cronus was the firstborn. He counts, in my view, as the second reincarnation of Uranus, of the demiurge, of that false god of the material senses or of reality. He is a reinvented evolution of Uranus, and so a reinvention of Hephaestus. This reincarnation wouldn't accept, as the original Yaldabaoth or Uranus didn't accept either, that a higher, greater one existed above him. So Cronus, or Saturn if you prefer, castrated Uranus, his creator, and Gaia reincarnated as his sister Rhea to be able to continue courting him in his new, more fractally micro dimension. Rhea and Cronus give birth to Zeus, and Zeus, as well as is well known in Hellenic mythology, successfully evades Cronus' attempts to prevent him from overthrowing him as he tries to swallow all of his creation, and eventually takes over from his father. My guess is that the next in line to overthrow Zeus is not Ares or Mars, as you've been actually saying. This is a side note because I've been hearing you talking about Mars as the new thing, the new god, right? But not Ares or Mars, but Dionysus, who was born from Zeus and Semele, who I think is again the next mythological reincarnation of the fallen Sophia or Gaia. But this is just my guess, as there is no further overthrowing myth after that one on record. In any case, the myths, albeit not real, reveal the truth behind the fractal creation, recreation, and procreation that ensued since the initial fall or the initial moving away from truth.
Does it
So
seem
this
to you
was a
like
bit more like,
the myths are this the template? I think the myths are the templates based on the stars, which keep them on the same pattern, but that they are recycled, and I think they're being reintroduced. You mentioned this Sophia, and
yeah,
what do you think of the Sophia robot introduced at the UN? This is a robot that pretends to be AI. It's basically a Muppet, and it was even given the status as a human being in Saudi Arabia. But they're trying to convince the public here that you could have a total distillation of our collective knowledge and have it put into a mind that is free of any kind of human motivation, human emotions, fear, greed, or any of that, and that it would just be pure knowledge, pure wisdom, in other words. And so I'm like, why would they use the name Sophia? Why would they use the name Gaia? You know, with the World Economic Foundation Forum,
but that is,
they have
yeah, that
Gaia
is
as their
that is
AI.
the
The new AI thing is called the Global AI Initiative Agenda. It's like, wow,
yeah.
Gaia.
The key there is to understand that that robot Sophia is Gaia, is a representation, is like a let's say a sort of voodoo doll of Gaia,
An
right?
idol. And you said voodoo
An
doll, and
idol.
they call those, like juju means toy. It's doll means it's idol. It's literally an idol, and it's an idol believed to be a repository for some higher mind. And then there's a recent movie that just came out with Ryan Reynolds called Free Guy about an AI within this metaverse thing becoming alive after seeing a woman that it's sort of like Neo and Trinity, or in the Truman Show, there's a woman that inspires him. In Free Guy, he sees this woman and suddenly he becomes sentient. Anyway, the whole movie, Free Guy, seems to me to be about free Gaia, and Gaia being this AI intelligence that spontaneously awakens and corrects the system and gets rid of the need for greedy CEOs, which is the exact thing that the World Economic Forum is suggesting that Gaia is going to do. That it's going to be a way to improve society with this. Uh, but anyway, they use these ancient mythological names, is my point.
Yeah, because like what I was trying to convey, and I don't know if that was clear or not, with the step by step in the mythology, like the the son takes over from the father, then his son takes over from his father, and so on and so forth. As they went from Uranus down to Zeus, and then either Ares or Dionysus. Um, is that that is what they consider the resets, okay?
Yes, yes, the main
But
zeitgeist shaping influence. So they're replacing the patriarchal, dying, resurrecting Christ with this new figure, the new God, or whatever you want to call him. But in the Thelemic concept, it's the aeon of the child, the crowned conquering child. They call him Horus, associated with Mars. But you can find various ways that this new age is being described. But my point being is that whatever it is, it's a new one. It means they're getting rid of the old. And I think that's one of the symbols that they've brought forth with the child as the conquering child, meaning he doesn't have the baggage of his parents. And this is where you have your David Hogg, your Greta Thunberg, and this entire youth culture, which suggests the old are. And look what they did with COVID. You had to
yeah,
separate the young from the old physically. But there definitely is here a succession. There is a succession, and these are recycled templates and stories. And in fact, today is the anniversary of the assassination of Abraham Lincoln, which I happen to think is a staged event, and it has way too many synchronistic connections to the assassination of JFK. And these political events go
yeah.
back, and they're all just as staged as the things that we look at today.
Yes, and they also, as you were mentioning during CV thing, they were also showing the separation and therefore the withdrawal symptoms of celebrities of being prevented from having um, whatever interactions with children, whether it was the adrenochrome or the whatever they were supposed to be doing. And you saw during those times, those lockdown times, how several celebrities were showing themselves like going crazy, getting old, and that sort of thing. And that is also part of the burning of the old world because they have to show, and this is the whole um, pedophilia expose again. And I'm not saying that there is no pedophilia, of course, that would be stupid of me to say. But the presentation is that the old world is a bunch of pedophiles, like the Catholic Church and the celebrities, and then there are Satanists who are pedophiles as well, and everyone in power is a pedophile. So the old world must be burned so that children are safe in the new one, right? So it links also with what you were saying.
Fascinating. Could very well be. I mean, if the old order is to be destroyed, I mean, my impression of this thing, and maybe it's pessimistic, but it's the same controllers passing a torch to people they've chosen for the new age. And I don't think there's like, I think it's old boss is the new boss, and it's a succession. And these templates make me think it's even more certain that this is a predictable cycle. And I think one of
Mm.
their obsessions with Chronos, Saturn, is the cyclical nature of time. And on the screen here, I have an image. This is I watched a documentary on Netflix last night about Elon Musk, a new one, and it showed
Mm.
how at the end of the 30-year shuttle program, they had a ritual where there are these twin towers where they actually launched the shuttle. They destroyed them. They just had a public event and they blew up these towers and it looked like 9/11. But they did this to symbolize the end of the 30-year shuttle program. And I thought that's a very interesting thing here when you look at the meta script and the symbolic
Hmm.
value of this and the ending of this program as what's needed to bring in the next thing. And this all ties in, of course, to the Challenger explosion, because the Challenger to me is the sun god who gets destroyed by the night by Saturn. But the
Hmm.
Challenger was blown up, and this is so deep in their symbolic system, but at 1 minute 13 seconds, 113. After the Twin Towers fell, they erected a new tower and it opened up on 113. So it's fascinating to me how the space drama correlates with the drama on the ground, and it's the same symbolic system. So, as far as this new age, do you expect that power is changing hands or power is being taken away from incumbents?
What those currently in power want is to do as you say, continuation. So there's no changing hands. However, I think that it's more or less um, an unpredictable sort of thing that usually happens in these times. And I think that there is a sort of table turning um, during these shifts, something that they really can't prevent. Let me give you an example. That was also a note that I had here, um, which is that for them to introduce a new world, the old world, even the elites, must be made to look undesirable. And it is an attempt at a controlled revelation or controlled demolition, as we know the link to that well, to prevent an organic revelation. So what we have is like when we observe these things, we are reading them unpredictably for them, right? They don't know how we. That's why they monitor your channel, right? Because they don't know how we are going to take it. How do we read what they present as script, right? So this organic revelation, it would occur anyway in the world. And if you recall a book, I think it was written in the 60s, by Isaac Asimov, a sci-fi author. It was called Foundation. I don't know if you've ever read.
Oh yeah, I
Um,
haven't read it. I've read quite a lot about it. They actually put copies of that in the trunk of the Tesla Roadster. And this is where I bring up where the laws that he brings up about how any sufficiently developed technology will be indistinguishable from magic. And
right.
I always bring that up with media. Let's not assume that what's we're seeing on TV is or all these crazy synchronicities. We can't assume necessarily that it's got some kind of higher power behind it. It might just be a very sophisticated technology we're not aware of. But anyway,
Hmm.
yeah, the Foundation series is key. It's a big because that's all post reset stuff. How do you start a new civilization on a different
It's even
world?
no, but it's even before. It's even before, because the storyline in Foundation, and especially the first book, then it moves on to other things, but is that the Empire is predicted to fall. This is the main premise. There's a big galactic empire, right? And this empire is predicted to fall, and this scientist is tries hard to convince the power people in the empire that it's going to fall, and the power people first laugh it off because they don't. This is we're in the height of our power. How can you say that we're going to fall? That sort of thing. But then he finally convinces them, and so he convinces them to provoke the demolition of the empire to maintain power. Because and this what is being said here is that the empire would organically fall, right? But the way that they would try to prevent the empire from organically falling and for them to lose their power and for the power to go to someone else, let's say for the tables to turn, would be to cause the demolition. And so you could control the opposition that would um, get the power in afterwards, right?
Okay,
So,
I think you might be really onto something here because there's all sorts of indications that there's this coming change. And so, if you wanted to maintain power, you would want to stay ahead of it. And you mentioned that the scientist in the foundation is trying to warn them and they're not listening. They've reintroduced Noah as the scientist warning of the coming cataclysm. But to your point, if you look at what they're doing, they're deconstructing traditional religions, traditional value systems, structures,
correct.
even
Yeah.
they're deconstructing everything. But it's not
They're
because
all
they're
pedophiles.
but they're
Yeah.
not liberating us. What are they doing? They're replacing it
Yeah.
with a new scientific religion that has all the elements of the old one. It's just another tyrannical system with a different pretext and a different set of authorities. A new priesthood being, of course, your high priest up there in the heavens, your astronauts, and then you got your virologist, who's really just your exorcist. You got your contact tracing, which is
Yeah.
your inquisition. But it's like they knew something was coming. The old systems of control were falling, so they've replaced it with this new technocratic system that's a one
Yes.
size
Yes.
fits all
Do
universal
you remember?
religion.
Do you remember the Venus Project with that old guy Jack Fresco?
Oh, the Venus Project. Yeah, why don't you
Yeah.
refresh me on it? I recall something, but
Yes, it was basically a technocratic. It was a project for a technocratic wet dream utopia that was regulated entirely by experts, which links to Walden 2 by B.F. Skinner. I don't know if you read that book as well, because it was all about experts controlling the behavior for our own good, you know. And if I may be, I know I can because you're relaxed about that, but if I may be a bit controversial here, um, I would say that this idea of the new age and of this, which links to Venus Project and the idea of this technocratic society, is also visible, I'm afraid, in the Tartaria crowd. I'm sorry to say that. And let me explain why. Because what we see, you know what I'm talking about, right? The
yes,
Tartary?
yes, the mud
Yeah, yeah.
flood
Okay.
thing and the idea that, see, I had never heard the phrase reset until the mud flood. And then I thought, I didn't
Right.
like that idea. I'm like, wait, are you telling me that we do all this work to try to expose the great deceptions and they're just going to wipe us out? There's going to be some kind of massive
Yeah.
flood of mud or something. And I was really kind of put off by it at first. But anyway, it's a fascinating concept, but it happens to match all the mainline propaganda, including the TV show 100 on Netflix, which is basically post reset orphan trains from space. But the idea
Yeah.
of Tartaria and the mud flood, there's a few things about it I find kind of suspect. But anyway, yeah, what's your take on that?
The issue, the Tartaria thing goes even a bit beyond what you're saying, in the sense that what is being told is there was this previous world, and they even call it usually old world. There was this previous world that was a utopia. It was worldwide. It was spread worldwide. It had fantastic technology, and everyone lived in peace, and everyone had free energy. This is something that is repeated over and over. They had free energy, and they had all these magnificent societal worldwide cities and whatever, right? And then it fell because some parasite came and destroyed it.
Okay, that's a key
Uh,
point. A key point is we're living in a comparative dark age to what came before.
Comparative,
Yeah.
yes, yes. And the my read on that is that the actual research content of what these people are digging up is remarkable. The content itself. The problem is that when we start looking, okay, so you had a worldwide society, okay, one world government, right? Oh, you had wonderful technologies and all that, so technocratic, right? And then, oh, you had free energy. Well, free energy for who? For a citizen. What does it take to be a citizen? What is the price to be a citizen? We don't know. We just see these structures. We understand, um, uh, or we may try to understand what they were for and what was the technology behind that, but we don't know the mentality. And the biggest error is to try to fit the mentality that we would like it was on what we see, right? And so what we see was probably, and what they're digging up is probably the fallen Atlantis. And if it is the fallen Atlantis, then it wasn't the good thing that we would wish for, right? And if it was the fallen Atlantis, that what we are doing is wishing for the return of Atlantis, which is what they want, actually, which is a technological, technocratic utopia. Worldwide, one world government. It's all the same. It doesn't matter if you go to Europe or to America or to Australia, it's all the same, right? With
Now,
different, okay, you can put different decorations, but the technology and the society is the same, right? So all this links to a previous world order, and maybe we should have been happy in the sense that it fell, right? Maybe it was an unpredictable event that caused it to fall when they thought that it was undefeatable, right? And the funny thing, and that's why I say the tables turn, because imagine that in the past, people like you and me, and listen, although I think that reincarnation exists, you don't need to believe that, but imagine that people like you and me were back then fighting the system and fighting for this world civilization to collapse because it was enslaving us, right? And now, if you were to go with the Tartaria thing, you would be wishing the opposite. You would be wishing, no, I want Tartaria back. I want that civilization back, right? Which is exactly what they lost, right?
I see what you mean.
So,
You might. It sounds to me. Also, someone in the chat just mentioned ironically that they don't censor Tartarian YouTube channels, and they don't. And
yeah,
anything they don't censor is something they probably want you to adopt. And this idea of Atlantis is very fascinating here. It ties in in their symbolic language to everything that we're talking about here. But in 2019, before the novel Crown, the new Crown arrived, there was a comet in the sky that was breaking up, and it was green, and it was C19, or comet Atlas. And so Atlas was breaking apart. And some scientists speculated that that was the source of the sickness. It came from space. Ludicrous. But anyway,
Mm.
the thing that I find noteworthy is that in the book Atlas Shrugged, and when Atlas broke apart, it made me think of Atlas Shrugging. When Atlas Shrugged came out, the whole book is basically about a group of elite shutting down all of the advanced technology, putting society into darkness, and they all go move to a hidden island they call Atlantis. And they
Mhm.
decide that they're going to build it back up after they starve the parasites. So you have a post reset, build back better after we get rid of the parasites narrative with
Right.
Atlas Shrugged.
Again, the parasite, right? Again, the parasite. But the problem is, what if what is being said as parasite is you, right? You can be considered a parasite. You're not participating in the the revolution or whatever you want to call it. So you're a parasite. I'm a parasite in that sense, in
Yeah,
their
John
view.
Galt didn't give me all my tax money back in platinum, and he didn't send me to Atlantis. I'm still here, and I got locked down, so I wasn't given the ticket to Atlantis.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And another thing that is important, and you've touched upon it recently as well, which is that they don't want to depopulate, about the Georgia Stones and that sort of thing. And one thing that I would add to that is, um, if you look back, and you have certainly more experience in digging the details of history than I do. When was the last real war? When do you think? A
Ooh, good
real
question.
actual war.
That's a good question. This is because when we say war, we know who writes the histories and who writes the accounts, and when we look at the news today and how fake it is. There's no reason to think that it was somehow realer before. So when you say the first real war, I would say maybe it's always been a war of an entrenched elite versus the masses. The war not really against the masses because they control them, but really it's
Exactly.
the elite and their proxy war through the masses against the individuals. Because the individuals who are the target of this infodemic, we don't have to worry about elitists coming down and dealing with us. We have to deal with their multitudes of true believers and followers that they radicalize,
Precisely.
who
Yeah.
get us to. So I call the NPCs the elite. I call the mass Karens. Those are the elitists. It's not about being rich. It's about your ideology.
Yeah. And you went exactly, and you're really intelligent and smart. And I'm not saying this slightly, because you went exactly to, with just one question, you went exactly to what I was trying to say. And note that if there was an actual war, and there is an actual war, but not on the physical, um, like you've just described. So when an army is losing a war or losing control of a war, the army must use censorship on its own battalions or its own soldiers to try to maintain discipline, right? Because if you are not exactly winning, you have to maintain discipline the most, because otherwise, the soldier will start to retreat or lose formation or whatever. So if an army was winning or is winning, then the morale keeps the current truth, in the relative sense, their truth, on their side. If you're winning, you feel, no, God is with me, right? Like that sort of thing. Or the truth is on my side because I'm winning. But if you're losing, then you must use censorship. You can't say things like, "Oh, I think we're going to lose." You know, "Oh, I think uh, the Earth is flat."
Yeah,
That
yeah.
sort of thing.
I think there was a
You understand what
term.
I'm saying?
The term decimate came from. I read about this practice supposedly about the Roman generals killing 1 in 10 when the morale was bad in order to improve
Right.
morale. But no, it's a key point. It's all about information control, and the morale, keeping us happy, bread in circuses. I talk about how Zuckerberg idolizes Augustus Caesar, and he's got the Caesar's haircut, and his whole website has the thumbs up, thumbs down, because ultimately we're looking at the Colosseum. We're looking at the Roman bread and circuses, and social media is the circus where the elite gauge the attitude of the masses that they control.
Exactly. Yes. Yes. It's and then what do you get on this social media? Okay, of course, Facebook was the sort of king of social media. Now, not anymore, I think. But what do you get there? You get gladiators. You know, it was Trump versus Biden. It was whatever was before versus another. You know, like what it's always a duality being put in so that you argue with each other to until you collapse, right? And that's what social media became. Because I still remember um, the initial stages of YouTube, for instance, where you're presenting your live now, and it was a much different. I mean, I don't know how old people in watching now are, but the YouTube in the beginning was very different from the YouTube now, where you would really see the strangest ideas being presented and promoted as, you know, a discovery thing, right? Do you still remember that?
I do. I used to call it YouTube University. You could learn all day from all kinds of people. You could discard bad information. You could laugh at debates you thought
Mm-hmm.
were fallacious. But to me, I thought, wow, this is the start of something of a renaissance, a rebirth, a philosophy. And I thought it was a wild west of philosophy, that we weren't going to be regulated or controlled. And it was really something. And they trashed it. The only remnant we have is the chat and the chat think tank we have. A lot of the
Mm-hmm.
people here were there when YouTube was actually exquisite. You had Google Hangouts where it took there was a very low technological bar to jump over to engage in multiple person live streams, and they
Mm-hmm.
took that all away. Now you have to be PC, you have to be politically correct, you have to support
Yeah.
Ukraine, you have to be vaxxed, and you have to be part of the censorship agenda.
Yeah. And someone in the chat, uh, uh, Pete Trippa, I think, was mentioning Mandela effect as a gauge to see the success of a certain psyop. I think that is quite probable. And if you don't mind me going now into Mandela effect, Tim.
Yeah, let's go into that because we talk about the Mandela effect a lot, not as the truth of what's happening, but as an actual
I know it bores
explanation.
you. So.
And yeah, well, it doesn't bore me. It's endlessly fascinating. And right now, some of the major QAnon promulgators are gathering for a conference, I think next month. So I'm going to be following it. So I'd definitely like to hear your thoughts on it.
Yeah. Well, my thoughts on it is first, I think, and I will say it straight out, Mandela effect to me, the way I see it, is refined gaslighting. And I say refined because normal gaslighting is, for example, you change an object's location and pretend nothing was changed, right? So when the person that is victim of that gaslighting goes back to that place, the person would swear that the object was to the left and now the object is to the right. And someone changed the object and the person is confused, right? So this is the normal gaslighting. In this case, it is not to change an object, but to call attention to it by saying it was in a different location all along. So if I tell you, and if I get enough people telling you that the object was always to the left, it has always been to the left, and even if you remember that it was to the right, right, you're going to be confused because there's that sort of peer pressure, right? In when a number of people will tell you that no, I remember it was to the left. I remember it was to the left, and then you start well doubting yourself, right? But I remember to the right, but maybe I mean they can't all be wrong.
Yes,
right?
like you have lying by omission, where you don't say something, and then you have lie by commission, where you present something as true that you know is false. And so, yeah, it's a deliberate. And I also refer to the interrogator bias because there is a coercive element to the way they present the options. It's only A or B. Can't be C, D, E, F,
Correct.
G
Yeah.
to
Framed, always
infinity.
framed. Yeah,
Yep, they
yeah,
frame it, and I
yeah.
look at it as a dynamic between an interrogator and someone who's being interrogated, which is a master and a subservient type of dynamic. And
Yeah,
that dynamic,
refined gaslighting. Yeah.
refined gaslighting is a great way of putting it.
And although I must say, although it can also change the object in some instances, and this, for example, between different editions of the same book, and I experienced this. Of course, I won't say that the book changed because it was a different edition, so it was edited, right? But I remember when I was in school as a little boy, there was this sort of comic, small book um, that showed in a comic book fashion the history of Portugal, right? And I remember vividly because I had a copy when I was in school um, of when they showed who the Moors were. I don't know if you know about the history of the Portugal and the Iberian Peninsula, but supposedly at one time we were completely overrun by Moors. Okay, and when it came to the Moors, the copy that I had, which was the earlier edition, showed a black Saracen, which is basically like a black guy like you would know nowadays, dressed in turban and those desert clothes, like an Arab, but he was black. Okay, and this was the Moor in the earlier edition. I found that same book being sold in a bookstore years later, and I have this book at home, and I just went through the pages like by curiosity. And when it came to the Moorish part, in this later edition, the Moor was no longer black; he was an Arab. You understand?
Yes.
So this can happen as well. And but this is when there's an edit, so they can do this as well to confuse. So in some instances, I think that they can edit the later editions of the object or the like a logo changing or something like that. But in most of the occasions, it is refined gaslighting. It is just framing the thing, you
Well,
know.
think about this too is there's this thing called I believe it's called the Innocence Project, where they found that in more than like 75% of cases where people are wrongfully convicted and later exonerated from some other evidence, they're convicted based on faulty eyewitness testimony. So,
Hmm.
are these people all lying to get people arrested? Or are they answering questions that are framed in a specific way to elicit answers that the prosecutors want? Or that they
Right.
are, in other words, maybe these answers aren't based on specific recollections. And this is
Yeah.
consistent. And the Mandela effect explanation for all these discrepancies presupposes perfect memory, which we don't have. It presupposes that we have this record, and it's like, well, show me a Mandela effectee that can win a spelling bee, and maybe I'll give it some attention. But most of them are atrocious spellers, so they're not even authorities on their own on the things that they're talking about as having changed. But the gaslighting is interesting to me because why would you have a conspiracy theory put out there that would intentionally cause people to doubt their own perceptions? And I think the reason why is this: too many people are seeing fake news. So you distract them with fake reality. And then it takes them out of the way of the authorities. Because now, instead of asking questions about 9/11, now they're asking questions about Jif peanut butter and Hanes underwear.
To make the unpredictable predictable, right?
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So all those ones who strayed from the mainstream path hit a guardrail, and it bounces them back on and keeps them in line. And even worse, and it's somewhat tricky, almost diabolical, is that if you go along with this notion, it actually leads you right into the heliocentric paradigm, into the totally chaotic universe where everything is always in flux and timelines do shift. And that's, to me, part of the new paradigm anyway. It's part of the post reset religious view where, yes, we are pretty much like what you talked about with the quantum physics. We're looking at them bringing all these stray sheep back into the dominant paradigm.
Yes. Quantum physics is completely false. I mean, there's nothing in it. It's just equations on paper, and the rest is, a Hollywood razzle dazzle, and you can do whatever. But going back to the Mandela effect, which is linked to the quantum physics as well, or so they want us to believe, it is supported by one point. Okay, and now I'll do a bit of the other side. Um, and it's supported by the point that this planned fake script is too precise in its memory and spans too much time to be the product of mental characters in human minds. Okay? And this is what overwhelms when we try to analyze. Because when you look at what you call metascript, okay, and I agree with that term. It doesn't matter. But what you call metascript, when you really look at it, you see that it can't. I mean, this can't be a round table of people deciding, of human people, of human minds deciding. This can't be one guy at the top deciding, having a sort of um, a wall board with all these connections and memories and remembering. It's not possible. It's not humanly possible. So that is a point that is goes in favor of people going into the Mandela effect thing. However, the and adding to that, sorry, the planned fake scriptwriter, so the scriptwriter of these metascripts is also extremely uncreative. It's uncreative because it can only repeat the same patterns over and over, as you detect and do all the time, right? These are archetypes, the same thing repackaged, like you usually say. But despite being uncreative, it shows inhuman access to memory. The only thing it's got is memory, right? And this is basically how a computer or AI would work, right? So it gives credence to the idea that there may be, um, uh, some sort of computer or group of computers that run through, they have all the memory that they want of all the facts that they want, and they run through scenarios like war games, that then present, if you do this, you have this probability of this happening, and that sort of thing. So it gives credence to that because it's really uh, not humanly possible.
I know what you're saying. I mean, it is
Yeah.
so intricate at times that it's like, is this the thing that is this what's responsible for synchronicity itself? Are we seeing synchronicity? Could man do this, or is this just a technology so developed it's indistinguishable from magic? But like to the point, if you look at the screen, the two towers falling at the
Hmm.
end of the 30 years of the shuttles. Well, here's some names of the space shuttles: Columbia, Endeavour, Discover, Atlantis, and Challenger. And William Cooper from Behold a Pale Horse put this together as, it's a story, it's a metascript here. It's a Columbian endeavor to discover Atlantis, and all challengers will be destroyed. So you take the names of all of these space shuttles, and it tells you that's their mission statement. And I think the challenger to the new Atlantis is America. It is this concept of free individual liberty, free market, and I think we are the challenger to be destroyed. That's why the Twin Towers were pulled, and the new tower, the One World Tower, opened on 113. Challenger explodes, 1 minute 13 seconds. Apollo 13 exploded, 113. This code is telling me, in my opinion here, my extrapolation from it is that this is a story about the reestablishment of this one world system or Atlantis, whatever you want to call it. And if you challenge them, you'll be basically destroyed.
No, sure, Tim, it is. But what I'm trying to say is that the way it links together, it has such perfect memory, but lack of creativity. This is important. It goes together with lack of creativity and perfect memory about all the of its own script before, right?
Okay,
And this is
okay.
something that this is something, for example, a human mind couldn't do because, like we were talking about liars before, right? A human mind liar will often forget the lie he told 10 years ago, right? And then someone gets him on it. Hey, 10 years ago, you told me that you lived there, uh, that sort of thing. And he doesn't remember what he told them because it was a lie, right? And so things get out of hand. However, in this case, the Metascript has perfect or near perfect memory. But it also needs to be said that of the followers and implementers of the fake script, of the meta script, like you say, those who actually put it in practice, like the Will Smiths and the what was that guy in the ISS, Headfield or whatever. These guys, they follow the plan religiously and do not deviate from it, even when they do not understand the reasons behind each step. And this is something that I think it's evident. They do not understand why they are doing what they are doing in most of the cases, you know? And
Yes.
it's sort of like the trust the plan motto, right? It is sort of like the trust the plan motto. Do what you were told to do what you got to do, and trust the plan, right?
Yeah, this is
But
very
on the
much like you brought up the military. You have the hierarchy of control, and for the mission to function, everything's on a need to know basis. And if the bottom knew what the top knew, they wouldn't be at the bottom. So I think that it really is trust the plan and go with the program.
Yes, I think that that's how the implementers, the ones that are more or less human or have human minds, go along with it. And so, if we understand that the this AI, or it could be, in my opinion, a sort of reflection shadow that is running the Metascript, they are unable to deal with, because they are uncreative, they're unable to deal with metaphors and allegories.
Or satire.
Meta-
That's funny
or
you bring this
satire.
up because
Yeah,
they don't get satire, they don't get parody, and that stuff gets through their filters. And
yeah.
I've described this world system as narcissistic, and humanity is in a codependent bondage with it. And one thing you can say about narcissists is they can only mimic. They don't create, there's no creativity. It's always
Yes.
unoriginal mimicry, which is far different from emulation.
Yes, and that is a sign of a shadow. I don't know if you're familiar with the term, but a shadow is basically a manifest potential of something that you have in your psyche that you didn't know you had. And so it manifests outside of you as your opponent. So that when you interact with your opponent, you see yourself. You're actually seeing yourself in a mirror, yourself in terms of your potential that was hidden from you. And so, with that confrontation, you can then integrate or go beyond or transmute that shadow content and come back to the true self. But that's just just an explanation to for you to know what I mean by shadow. But so they can't understand metaphors, allegories, and satire, like you said, because they can only exist in an uncreative and memory driven, fact driven reality. So they can only literalize, that is, to make everything literal, right? So when you hear all gods, things that we would take as metaphors or myths, they make it literal, you know? The Bible is literal, absolutely 100% literal, you know? Or,
Yes, well, computer models. The climate change model isn't the
yeah,
real world, but people live in that model and they're scared to death. The pandemic was a model. The idea of space junk about to fall and rain down on cities, this is all based on computer models that have replaced our reality because we have a reality filter, the
yes,
screen, and the
yes,
screen puts those models before everything else.
yes. And so they make and promote, what they are actually doing is they make and promote materialism on all sides. This is because they can only exist in material, in the material sense of reality, right? In things that are literal. And they want to drag down the soul through its attention. It's the attention of the soul. And as you've uncovered several times, that they want to throw your attention to this side or that side, right? Um, they want to drag down the soul through its attention to the level of material, uncreative reality. So if we were to say that this world is, for example, a simulacra, right? Then the shadows would be reflections of rejected or unwanted personality from the players' souls, players in the sense of the original selves, that otherwise would be unseen to them. And since it's an honest mirror, to the extent that it will show the potentials that are normally hidden or rejected by the observer's soul, um, we are in a confrontation. Those that see beyond the material, in the sense of the literal thing, right? The climate change is literal and all that. Uh, we are being confronted with an opponent that is actually mirroring our own um, temptations, if you like. And if you see, for example, Tim, when you're tempted by something, let's say, I don't know, if this many $1 million, whatever, would make you think twice, right? And you just start doing this sort of analysis that we present you, that sort of thing, right? That temptation would only be presented to you if you had anything compatible, was compatible to be tempted by greed, by that proposal,
So,
right?
okay, so like
If
with the question of the I brought up the gun versus the needles. You have like you got Greta on one side, same birthday as Kyle on the other. They're complete opposites, and you talk about the shadow, one being more or less inherent in the other, but they're kind of like they're artificially separated.